it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 3 of my 2024 Valentine Card Series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's All My Heart and the Scent with Love add-on. So I've stamped the images I'll be using on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm starting with my mouse, and I'm going to color him with some E30s today just for something a little bit different, to make a little brown mouse. I'm using E30, E31, E33, E35, and E37. So I started with that E37, laying in a little bit of shadow. He's facing toward the left, so my shadows are going to be mainly down the right-hand side of his body, and then also at the base of his ears, and the underside of his arms, and his feet as well. And then I blended that out with the E35, and continued coloring with the E33. Originally, I thought I was going to just use the darkest 3 shades for the main part of the body and then the lighter 2 shades for the inner ears and the belly. But I ended up deciding to add in a bit of that E31 on the body and face as well because he was just looking a little bit dark. So you could also just leave off the E37 in this combo if you wanted to. Then I'm going to move on to some pinks. I'm using R21 and R22 to color in his nose, add some rosy cheeks, and color in the insides of his ears. And then I'll use all 3 of these shades, including the R24 in this mix, to color in some of the hearts. So I wanted to keep all of my hearts in kind of like a coral pink to red color palette. So I'm going to be using similar shades of markers for all of them, but I still wanted to have 3 different tones. So the first one I'm doing is actually the middle tone of the hearts. So I'm starting with that R24 down toward the bottom left. I just decided to keep it consistent with the shading that I had done on the mouse, and then blending up toward the top right. And then to lighten this combo a little bit and just make it slightly softer, I'm using R00, R21, and R22, and I'm going to continue coloring some additional hearts. And then I'm also going to use these shades to color in the heart balloon in the center, the one that the mouse is not hanging from. So I ended up stamping out a 3rd little heart balloon, so a second one of these single heart balloons, and coloring that in the medium pink combo. I just decided that since everything was pretty much in little trios, I wanted to have 3 of those on the card as well. My R00 was getting really dry, so it was streaking on the coloring there. So I switched it out for the R000 and then just went back to blend the transition between those shades. And then I'm going to switch things up and go a little bit darker. I'm going to bring back in that R24, which was the darkest in my middle red combo. And now it's going to become the lightest in my darkest red combo. So I'm using the R24 with R29 and R39, which is a nice, beautiful, bright red. I'm going to color in the heart balloon that the mouse is hanging from. And then I will also color all of the additional little hearts. And I tried to mix up the hearts so that each time I'm coloring one in a different color, it's in a different position in the little trio, just to make things a bit more interesting and, you know, not have them look all the same, especially since I am using such a limited color palette. And then I took a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and got that going off to the side. Mine's a little bit dry, so it takes a few tries. I did get a new one, but I haven't pulled it out yet. But I'm going to go over the eyes of my mouse to make those bright and shiny, and then trim these images out with their matching dies. For the background, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock, and I'm going to use the Lawn Fawn Cloudy Stencil along with some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink to create a little sky background. So I'm just starting on that stencil with my ink blending tool and pressing down firmly to transfer a bit of color, and then lifting up on the pressure as I go up the panel so that it gets a little bit softer and more dreamy. And then I'll turn that stencil and select a different cloud formation as I move down the panel. And sometimes I like to put the clouds a bit closer together, but today I wanted them spread a bit more apart. I think that makes them look really extra fluffy and close up, as if the image is right there in the clouds, and that is the look that I wanted to go for today, rather than the clouds being at a distance. I also added a little bit of extra ink down at the bottom, so that would not be just stark white, so it stays in that kind of fluffy, dreamy cloud look. And then I'm going to splatter some of the ink on the background to just give it a bit more interest and movement. So I pressed that pad onto an acrylic block, added a bit of water to make that more fluid, and then I'm picking that up with a thin paintbrush and tapping it off the side to get a fine little spray of dots. And then I will set this panel aside to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to take a piece of barn red cardstock from Lawn Fawn and die cut that with the Quilted Heart Backdrop Portrait. And I also did use a metal shim as I ran this through my die cutting machine. I think a metal shim really helps with these intricate dies and makes the little pieces pop up very smoothly. You can see I'm just taking my craft pick and just tapping it against the center of those hearts, and they're just popping right out. Really nice and easy. In the past, I have struggled with intricate dies and avoided them because it was really difficult to get a clean cut. But ever since I got the metal shim, it has really made a big improvement, so I highly recommend it. The one that I have is also from Lawn Fawn. So I'm actually going to save all of these tiny hearts that I popped out. I'm going to put those in a little pile and then gather them up in my Twiddler's Nook embellishment tray, and I'll just set those off to the side for now. And then I've got a piece of white cardstock that I am trimming out with the stitch scalloped rectangle frames. I used the second largest. And I'm just going to pop that frame out and set that aside. The inner piece I can save for another card. So now I'm going to glue these together. I'm taking that piece of barn red cardstock and adding tiny little dots of glue all around it in between those hearts. I want to make sure that it is really well secured to the card front. Especially because I ran it through the die cutting machine with that metal shim. It does warp the cardstock a little bit and give it a tendency to curl on the ends. So I really want to make sure I have a lot of glue on there so it's going to hold that down securely to the card front. And I am going to be gluing that to a card base that I made out of some guava cardstock. It's a standard A2 size card, so 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall, and then I'm just pressing that down into place, and you can see that it was just wanting to curl back up. So I started to grab some acrylic blocks, but it just wasn't enough weight to hold it in place, so I ended up grabbing a stack of library books and just setting it under that for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Next, I'm going to take that stitch scallop rectangle frame and add a bit of glue right on the inner edge, and then adhere that to my cloudy background and just make sure that that is on there nice and straight. And to help that dry securely, I'm just going to use my acrylic blocks because those are heavy enough for this little frame. Then I also want to die cut some letters. I'm using some Finley's ABCs, and I am going to die cut those out of more barn red cardstock for part of my sentiment. So I'm spelling out the word soar and just taping those in place with a bit of post-it tape, and then I can pop those out and put the letters back on my magnetic sheet, and then I will set those die cuts off to the side because we'll be using those in just a minute. So after I had that done, I started thinking about that background, and I really decided that I didn't like the combination of the Bristol and the white frame because the Bristol is a bit of an off-white and I just didn't think it looked very nice. So I decided to change it up by cutting another frame out of some guava cardstock to match the card base, and I'm going to adhere that right on top of the white frame, so it'll just be a bit of a pop of color there instead, and I don't have to worry about the whites not matching. So I'm going to pop that into my MISTI. I've got my Waffle Flower 6x6 grid mat in there to hold that down in place, which makes it really easy to arrange my little letters at the bottom, because this is the bottom of my sentiment, and I need to have these letters placed to figure out the part that I want to stamp above it. So I am just going to do this all in my MISTI to make it really easy. So once I have my letters placed how I want them, I'm going to pick them up with my EK Success reverse tweezers, and then add a little bit of glue to the back. I'm using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue because it has that super fine tip to get behind those little delicate letters. And then I'm going to just pop them back down into place and make sure that they are on there nice and straight. But I didn't press down on the letters too hard just yet because I just wanted to make sure that the spacing looked right before I really secured them into place. So I ended up bumping that A, but I was able to fix it and then just push them down a bit more firmly until they made contact and that glue could dry. It dries very quickly. Then I can take the rest of my sentiment, which is from the All My Heart stamp set, and I'm going to arrange that above those die cut letters and make sure that I have the same amount of space between the first letter and the left side and the last letter and the right side, so it looks nice and even. Then I can pick that up with the door of my MISTI and ink that up with some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It's a nice bold black ink that lays well over Distress Oxide inks, so it really is my go-to for stamping on Bristol, but you do have to be careful because it does stay wet for a little while, so I always just set it off to the side and give it maybe 10 minutes to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI and stamp on the inside with some lobster ink, and the image and the sentiment are from the Scent with Love add-on. I've added a bit of foam tape to the back of the focal panel to give it some lift on the card. I'm going to center it between all of those little hearts and then pop that down into place. Just being really careful not to smudge that sentiment. And then I can bring in my images. I'm going to lay out the larger ones first just to get an idea of where I want things to go, and then I can start adhering things down. I wanted to have the mouse toward the right hand side and then the two heart balloons towards the left and overlapping a bit. So that's how I'm going to lay those out. And I'm just making sure that they are nice and straight on there because you really want your balloon strings to look straight or it can make your whole card kind of look wonky. So just taking extra care to adjust those and make sure that they are straight up and down how I want them to be. And then I can start adding in the extra little hearts. So I have a couple little trios and then I have the larger single heart. So I'm going to arrange those little trios up on the top part of the card. So I'm using those to fill up some of that empty space around the three main images and also trying to put them at varying heights just to give a bit more interest and movement to the scene. So I have one of the trios tucked back behind the mouse's ear to make it look like they're coming up behind him and all around him. And then the smaller trio I put toward the top, and then the other large trio is going to go right above the sentiment to kind of draw more attention down that way. And then the single heart I thought I would put in the center of the O just to pull some of those images down toward the bottom of the scene. So I think I like the look of that. I don't know, it's something a little bit different, but I decided to leave it. So I am actually going to take a few of those extra little hearts that I popped out of the quilted heart backdrop and use those as an embellishment. So I just put 3 tiny little dots of glue, and then I'm picking those up with my Studio Katia embellishment wand and just making sure that they are on there straight as well, and popping those into place right on top of the little dot of glue. I like to use the back end to straighten things up. And then of course I wanted to bring in a bit of glitter, so I'm going to use my favorite Stardust Stickles and add that to the bottom right of each of the hearts. I like to put it in the darkest shaded area. And first I thought maybe I would only do the heart balloons, but then I ended up doing all of the colored hearts because I just couldn't stop myself. And I also decided to add a little bit to the bottom of each of the die cut letters just to bring some of that glitter down toward the bottom of the scene as well. And that is going to finish this one off, so I'll lift that up so you can see all of that sparkle and shine and give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun creating it. I love that little mouse. I think he's so super sweet. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell if you want to be alerted whenever I post a new video. All of the products I use will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below, and if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 3 of the previous 2 years of Valentine Card Series. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.